addition, remember with segment addition,
no angle addition in this.
Dominic, quiet please. Just like angle addition, if we had two angles, we could add them together and equal it to the whole, which would be AC. The same thing applies to angle addition. Okay, now you had in your homework numbers 22 and 23 was doing angle addition. You guys just added two angles together. Okay, and it's pretty simple and just as simple as that. So for our diagram, in this scenario, we have the measure of angle RST. So let's make angle RST. So there's an angle R, S, and T is equal to the measure of angle RSP. So I'm just going to put a ray somewhere in the middle of that and make it ray SP, plus the measure of angle PST. So let's make sure this makes sense. The whole entire angle is equal to the two little angles added together. Angle addition. Right? Does that make sense logically? If this was 10 and this was 30, the whole thing would be 10 and 30, the whole thing would be 40. If the whole thing was 50 and this was 20, what would the other one be? 30. Okay? Angle addition. It's as simple as that. So if you look at the example below, is everybody okay? If you look at the example below, we were looking for the measure of angle ABC. We'll think first, angle ABC is the angle that I've highlighted in blue. What would be the measure of it? What are we going to do with those numbers?
44.
Yeah, so the measure of angle ABC is equal to 44 plus 26. 44 plus 26 is 70. So the measure of angle ABC is equal to 70 degrees. Angle addition. Add the two angles together. So far, so good. Okay, on to the next. Now, in this diagram, it's a little bit different. The measure of angle ABC, they're telling us the whole thing is 120 degrees. So notice how there's an arc that goes all the way through the angle, and there's a number pointing to that arc, and it's showing that that's 120 degrees. So that's stating that the whole entire thing is 120 degrees. So if the whole entire thing is 120 degrees, and this angle DBC is 70 degrees, what would be ABD? What would you do with those two numbers? You would subtract them to get 50, right? So the measure of angle ABD is equal to 120 minus 70, which would be equal to 50 degrees. Make sure whenever you're talking about the measure of an angle, you put the little degree sign there. And again, use common sense. If I add 120 plus 70, we get what? 120 plus 70 is 190. Are any of these angles obtuse? Well, I guess I shouldn't say it. Are any of those angles more than a straight angle? More than a straight line? No, there's no way, right? So this angle cannot be 190 degrees, so I'm going to subtract them to get to the 50. All right, let's throw some algebra into our lives. Angle addition using algebra. Jimmy, head up, please. So before we said we would take 44 plus 26, which would equal 70. Do I have a 44 and a 26 in this case? Does that have anything to do with anything?
I see a problem in that.
There is no problem. Quiet.
No, listen.
Dominic, stop.
It's important. If it's to the power of 0, then both of those will be 1.
It's not to the power of 0.
It is
What did I just say that you're supposed to do? When you're talking about the measure of an angle, it's degrees. That's a degree sign. So, we take one angle, add it to another angle, and equal it to what? Well, for purpose of our notes, let's write out the actual verbal angle addition. So the measure of angle LKN is equal to the measure of angle LKM plus the measure of angle MKN. Do we have the whole angle measure? Yes. It's how many degrees? Yeah, I have to give you a pass, Jimmy. What is LKN's measure? Anybody? 145. Good. What is the measure of LKM? Do we know it? What's the expression? LKM.
2x plus 10.
Yep, so we're going to substitute that in. And then what is MKN? Yes, so 2x plus 10 plus 4x minus 3 is our equation. Combine your like terms on the right. 2x plus 4x makes 6x. A 10 minus a 3 is 7. Yeah.
6.
Subtract 7 from both sides. 138 is equal to 6x. Divide by 6. 6 goes into 13 once. Or sorry, twice with a remainder of 1. So it looks like it's going to be 23. Is that my final answer? Nope. I need to know the measure of these two angles, so we're going to substitute that back in. 2 times 23 is 46. 46 plus 10 is 56. So the measure of angle LKM is equal to 56 degrees. Now do it for the other angle. 4 times 23 minus 3. So 4 times 23 looks like is 92. 92 minus 3 is 89. So the measure of angle MKN is equal to 89 degrees. If you add those two together, do you get 145 degrees?
What's even going on here?
Do we get 145 degrees when we add those together? Sure. 56 plus 89 is 145. Yes, just sign out, please. Okay, so we have angle addition, just like we had segment addition. We talked about congruent segments before. What markings do you put on segments to show congruency? The lines. Okay, so we do a different type of marking for congruent angles. So remember, congruent means same measure. So if I had congruent angles, then I have two angles that have the same measure. Yeah. So in your diagram, draw in two angles that look like they're the same measure. They don't have to be exactly congruent, but we want to try it there. So just like we had congruent segments as our marking here, what we do in angles is we put a little arc in the angle to show congruency. Okay, so if this was angle A and this was angle B, I could say that angle A is congruent to angle B. They're not equal because they're not in the same spot, but they're congruent. What's true about the measures, though? If this angle A was 25 degrees, what would be the measure of angle B? 25. So the measure of angle A is equal to the measure of angle B. And it's good to notice the difference between the two of those as we get closer to our two-column proofs and understanding what the difference of this statement and the difference of this statement means. Okay? And you can have as many of those arcs as you want. So if I have angle A and angle B,
M angle B.
I just explained that. Were we not listening?
I still don't understand it though.
The measure of. So what would be the pair of congruent angles? A would be congruent to what? B. C would be congruent to D. And you can put as many little lines as you need to possibly put into an angle to show your congruency. Hello? I do? Sure. Okay. Alexis, you're being dismissed. Make sure you get the homework written down before you leave. Okay, so if we flip onto the back, we have a diagram. What are my congruent angles? T is congruent to Dominic. S. P is congruent to angle P and R, because they have double arcs inside of them. Okay, Q is not congruent to anything in this scenario. So we've got congruent angles. The last thing we have to cover before we're out of here in 5 minutes is angle bisector. What were we talking about when we talked about a line segment that was being bisected? If this line segment was being bisected by line T, what does that give us? Congruent parts, right? Whenever we hear the word bisect, we're thinking congruent. So the same thing applies for an angle bisector. Oh, come on. Sending request. There we go. So for an angle bisector, we're going to have a ray that divides an angle into two equal parts. So if we have an angle, let's call this angle BAC. Now, as best as you can inside that angle, try to draw a ray that splits it evenly in half. And to show that it's an angle bisector, we're going to put single arcs in each of the angles. I am not going to make one whole entire arc, because then that means I'm talking about the whole entire angle. I'm talking about the two separate angles, and they're both congruent because they both have a single line going through them. Yeah, so put the arcs in different places. Don't do this, because that's just looking at the whole entire thing. Okay, so you want to have them staggered a little bit. All right, so last example. In the diagram at the right, ray YW bisects angle XYZ. If XYW, let's find angle XYW, if that's 18 degrees, what's this angle down here going to be? What's the whole thing?
What's this? I don't understand what this is even asking.
It's finding the measure of angle XYZ. So the measure of angle XYZ would be what? Yes, 18 plus 18, which is 36. So whenever you hear the word bisects, so put a little star maybe. Bisects means set equal. Oops, equal to each other. That should be your first clue on what you should be doing. If it does not say the word bisect, then you're probably going to do some type of addition. If it says the word bisects, then you're